they have been influenced by environmental challenges. So an individual will see that they are most highly at risk because of their situational factors. For example, cholera, right? So the situational factor there would be unsafe water, right? So a person will be more likely to treat their water because they are looking at their environmental factor that puts them at a high risk of contacting cholera, right? And therefore they are more engaged in preventative mechanisms because they have identified the risk that they have and also the severity of the illness. Anthu amaopsezana kuti kolera umangosegula mmodzi kawiri tukatatu basi watani wamwalira. Yes, so you are looking at this the evaluation of severity. In addition, the core components of the model, they are demographic, socio-psychological and structural variables. Furthermore, the cues come in form of media campaigns on illnesses such as, and also illnesses of family members and relatives or close friends. So for you to make an assessment and also severity for you, it is determined through what you have heard, through the media that will popularize the prevalence of an illness. If a family member has told you, memukupangira inu nanji inu chitsime chanu chijasimu madzi anu simumayika chlorine, for example, we giving an example of cholera, right? Inu ndemudwala, right? So that person is more likely to engage in activities that ensure that they are not at risk of that particular illness. So the models, in conclusion of the models, they discuss the key elements of environmental education, right? Across the various aspects of community life and interplaying human behavior with the complex variables that are associated with environmentally responsible behavior. And this includes the several concepts that we have identified, the various variables, and also we can say the succession of the models from one model to the other within a community context. Any questions? So those are the 6 models of environmental, the models of, sorry, the human factor on environmental impact assessment. No questions? Okay. So we are going to proceed to environmental impact assessment. We looked at the human factor, now we're proceeding to environmental impact assessment. So we have looked at the human factor that determines whether an individual is going to act towards environmental responsible behavior. But now we are going to look at environmental impact assessment. So environmental impact assessment is a process. Environmental impact assessment. Oh. Environmental impact assessment is a process of identifying, evaluating, and mitigating the possible environmental impacts of proposed development. Environmental impact assessment is the process of identifying, evaluating, and mitigating the possible environmental impacts of proposed development. So what this means is development project in a country, right? They have to engage an environment, or they have to make an environmental impact assessment. They are making an impact assessment to determine the various factors of that developmental project that is going to affect the environment in the long run. Okay? They are making an identification. For example, see agumanga sewa bobwet ama ina aguda abange environmental impact assessment. A very good example when you're looking at the environmental impact assessment of the road would be uh, it's it sort of disrupts the topology of the soil, okay? And also, agamanga seusama ina utadule meeting, right? So that's an impact of them building a road. And there are various developmental projects that affect the environment. So they make this impact to look at, they have identified, and they also make an evaluation. And the last factor there is mitigating. How are they going to, we can say, respond to the effects of these environmental factors that have been identified? So these impacts include biophysical, social, and other related effects of developmental proposals. So it is not just the environmental, but also social and also relating factors. So the EIA has got objectives. The objective of the EIA, the first, is to ensure that environmental considerations are implicitly addressed and incorporated into the decision-making process. Ensure that environmental considerations are addressed or incorporated in the decision-making process. One of the objectives is to ensure that the environmental issues that associated with the project have been taken into account. Asangoyanga noda manganseu basi and handy road network, but then how is that going to affect the environment socially and so on, right? So a social example would be if they are building road networks, it promotes, we can say, urbanization, right? Yes. So urbanization, we said, is a factor that promotes pollution and so on, right? So you are looking at all these factors. And the second, to anticipate and avoid adverse effects of developmental proposals. So we have made a consideration, development project in the EU, we've made a consideration of the environmental factors that could come, right? And we are trying to anticipate the adverse effects of that developmental project, right? The consideration, and then we are looking at the adverse effects of the project. And to protect the productivity and capacity of the natural system. That's the third, to protect the productivity and the capacity of the natural system. So the EIA allows for developmental projects to choose a site in regards to the ability of the natural systems to not be disrupted. Okay? So they ensure that the site that they're using for development does not affect the natural system. For example, agamange nsewu pamalo pokuti pauko nsewu chena amaumanga pamalo poti paudutsa madzi komano amange monena kuti madzi aja azithodutsa yani bwinobwino eti it's not going to cause maybe flooding or disrupt people's social life. So you are looking at that. That's why they build we can say prominent bridges to ensure that the natural systems have not been disrupted. And the last one is to promote development that is sustainable. To promote development that is sustainable. So this is a very important factor when you are looking at environmental impact assessment, because we are saying we are trying to highlight or determine the issues that are coming because of developmental projects. Yes? Yes, and capacity of natural systems. Yeah, which I was giving those examples. I should proceed? Yes. I was saying to promote development that is sustainable. The whole point of environmental impact assessment is to say we have identified the potential risks, right? Having identified these potential risks, we'll be able to determine the sustainability of the resources that we are disrupting, right? So these are the objectives of environmental impact assessment. So the environmental impact assessment is only very important if it involves the public. if it involves the public, because normally and according to communities, it, and they're generally going to be the ones affected by the various developmental projects. So to enter a process of the assessment, the public is involved as a fundamental principle of the EIA process. So with timely, well-planned and appropriately implemented public involvement, programs will contribute to EIA. So we are saying that it is important for public participation to be made and to probably be planned. So we are looking at these plans. Has any of you ever traveled? Did you travel to Blantyre the last year or two? Yes? Did anyone travel to Blantyre for the last year or two? No one says in Blantyre here. No say Makawu, no? Okay, so on the road to Blantyre the last 2 years, pana isave ya kumanga se undu kumanga maujinaji. Way imagine ma toll bridge, ma toll gate ajet. Amafunso na kuti kodi ababa madusa kangati, zinthu ngazimenezo, so they're trying to determine between the public perception. So that was the form of EIA for them, to determine how are people going to perceive the issue of Matoke, right? And so that was people who are commuting. So my communities that are around close to Matoke, and have also environmental impact assessment to determine how they are going to be affected by an increase in construction. So they had to make a construction. You find that it increases the sex workers and so on. So you are looking at also these factors that affect the community. So there are also objective benefits of public involvement. There are benefits of public involvement in EIA. Public involvement is very important because it informs the stakeholders about the proposal and the likely effects. So community that were the example that we're giving Matoke Taja, they were informed on that proposal and also the likely effects, right? Including the commuting community. And the second objective, it canvasses their inputs, views, and concern. But then they also, it gives a chance for the community to voice out their concerns about that particular development. A very good example when you're looking at many of these developmental projects in my communities, anthu amatha kudandaula kuti kunabwera project yakuti ankazi apanga zomwe zimukunenazo koma anangochoka pakatikati upeza kuti anthu sanathandize and anasokonezera mmene amayendesera moyo wawo. So that is sort of a concern when they're looking at trying to create implementation mechanisms within a particular project. And the key objectives of public involvement are: the first, obtain local and traditional knowledge that may be useful for decision making. Akumanga se waku Karunga, munamva noti mtengo wina anaukanika kugwesa, munaona kuti anse waja anadusa ukuse mtengo utakanika kugwesa papa. So that is sort of, it's a community belief, right? So through knowing the community context, my contractor jama ine akuti adziona kuti ukuku anthu akupira zakuti actually ena anagwesa mtengo mapeza kuti chigredera chimene chimagwesa mtengo chinangofera soko sichimatani ogwesa kuzachikoka akuti because me haven't, this is supposedly, right? Chimakanika chimene chichakuti even kuti achipange to chinakakamira patipo pompache. So this is an important factor when you're looking at local communities specifically, because there are different cultural variances across different countries. And the second objective of public involvement is facilitate consideration of alternatives. If they have identified the various effects of that particular project and heard the considerations from the community, they are able to determine considerations of alternatives alternative activities in regards to the developmental project. And the third is mitigating measures and trade-offs. So this is more of mitigating measures and trade-offs. Yeah, so mitigating measures and trade-off is more of when you are trying to engage in activities, makandi plan A, plan B, plan C, it. So you see within those plans, which one is going to benefit most in terms of the developmental project. The fourth is ensure that important impacts are not overlooked. Ensuring that important impacts are not overlooked. So sometimes these developmental projects, they come in, they have made paperwork of the impact of that particular project. Those are the technical experts, right? But then akapita pa community level, amakhaona kuti a community aja, they have the different experiences with these developmental projects, and therefore they have identified their own impacts of such projects. So the community involvement allows for those technical reviewers to understand the impacts that have been highlighted by the community and come up with better consideration or alternatives, and ensure that maximum benefits are realized. And then we have reduce conflict through early identification of contentious issues. Reduce conflict through early identification of contentious issues. So this would be such as the project beneficiary, right? So project beneficiaries, sometimes project yabwera ama beneficiary ndomweo, project yabwera ama beneficiary ndomweo, right? And it's affecting the polarity of, let's say, distribution of resources in a community. So involving the community through EIA, you are able to identify, yeah, community mabanga benefit joint. So therefore, let's consider another area. A very good example would be the projects that are being made in various districts. Uma vez project yose kabwera iya Mchinji, Mchinji Mulanje, projects unave wote ya ukaronga kuli project ai. So you are looking at these contentious issues where if they have identified problems, if they are saying, let's say they are building a road, banji malo ameni also banji sa kumanga jani nsewu jet. And the last one is provide an opportunity for public to influence project design in a positive manner. To provide an opportunity for public to influence project design. Mapanga project management, Mr. Monifosi? Yeah? Oh, okay. Well, generally, most of undergraduate courses are supposed, especially with social work, yeah, most social science is supposed to have project management because most of the times my project. So you need to understand these project management mechanisms. So we are saying the reason why I've asked that is because I'm looking at the project design. If you understand what project design is, right? So the project design is like if you have identified a problem, right? The design allows you to look at the various areas that you are going to address in terms of initiatives, in terms of actions. So if you have identified the community, let's say Anhambira, Anatsiga Nambira Mawati Wansanga, you are looking at the various associating factors, right? You look at various also organizations that are also putting play in the problem that you have identified. You look at the various community variables that are going to affect your initiatives, and then you come up with probable actions that are going to challenge that particular problem. So this is the project design. So we are saying that it provides an opportunity for the public to influence project design because they will be part of this design of the project. What the problem you may identify, Muzaibanga address in what way, right? They have to be, they have to sort of be part of that decision making in terms of the activities that are going to be made. Moving forward, Environmental impact assessment is very important. We have identified that environmental impact assessment is important when you are looking at public involvement, right? But with anything comes advantages and disadvantages, right? So the environmental impact assessment has got its pros and its cons. And the EIA is a pivotal tool for sustainable development. That is a key factor. But like any other process, the EIA poses benefits and also limitations in terms of key insights into the decision-making process. And through this, we are going to examine to identify the impacts of the EIA as a tool that requires modification. First, we'll look at the advantages of the EIA. The first advantage is identifying potential environmental impacts. The first advantage of the EIA is that it offers a chance to identify potential environmental impacts, which we identified that as an objective, right, of EIA. So EIA is forward-looking tool. It projects to what can possibly go wrong, right? That systematically assess proposed projects and development. By doing so, it identifies potential environmental impacts before they can occur. So it allows for you to look forward in the future and look at all the possible bad things that can happen because of the project, right? Without even usiago maybe various either other elements. So this foresight enables decision making to prevent measures, mitigate the harm, protect natural resources. It acts also as an environmental early warning system, right? The second is integrating environmental consideration and decision making. Integrating environmental consideration and decision making. So the EIA ensures that environmental factors are integrated into decision making process. This means that environmental concerns are not afterthought but are considered alongside economic and social impact. So through like the project management system, when a project is being appraised, it has to go through a environmental impact assessment, a social impact assessment, and an economic impact assessment. So we are saying we are integrating the environmental pact because we do not just look at the developmental or the economic or social impact of a project, but also the environmental impact. And the third is protecting natural resources and the ecosystem. It is a very important factor when you're looking at developmental projects because most of the times there is extraction of resources or disrupting the natural systems. So the EIA is an instrument for safeguarding our planet's natural resources and ecosystem. A very good example from a Malawian context is the project uranium mining, right? So when you look at the project of uranium mining, you are looking at how if we did, let's say, probable impact assessment, economic assessment, is it going to benefit the country, Malawi? Right? Socially, is it benefiting our country? And environmentally, what are the implications of mining uranium, right? So this is an example of protecting natural resources and the ecosystem. And the fourth is promoting sustainable development. So the EIA is aligned with principles of sustainable development, which it ensures that projects are not just economically viable, but also environmentally and socially responsible. So by promoting projects that respect the carrying capacity of the environment, the EIA helps create a more sustainable future. And the last advantage is engaging stakeholders and the public. The EIA is very apparent in looking at stakeholder engagement and the public, which creates a transparent process for identification and mitigation of environmental challenges. So by involving various parties from the local community to environmental organization, the environmental impact assessment ensures that there is a diverse perspective uh, being put in play. So we said that Pamakama technical experts in environmental issues, but then we also want to look at the community participation. What are their experiences in terms of my developmental projects, because they are the beneficiaries. So we are looking at these two perspectives in regards to a developmental project. So this inclusivity not only strengthens the decision-making process, but also increases public awareness and understanding of environmental issues. And the advantages of the EIA are fundamental to responsible and ethical development. So having looked at these advantages, we are now going to look at the disadvantages of the EIA. The first is that it is time consuming and has got a lot of cost implications. My technical experts ama ina alibiribe. That technical expert wakunja muntu chaino. So it's costly not only because there's technical expertise, but also because there's time. Because it requires a lot of time, you can't just pay someone maybe for 2 days. They would have charge it until you say manage our car. So conducting a thorough EIA can be time consuming and costly. It involves firstly data collection, analysis, public consultation, compliance with regulatory process. Ajatunena kuti amaenda nthawi amanga matogirachi. Amene aja ma enumerators, amene aja ma inodani alipilibet. So you are looking at the analysis team. And what about the compliance with regulation? So within the regulations, they sort of have to go through a process of payment in gaining regulatory licenses. So the delays in assessment phase can result in project postponement, increasing expenses, and this creates more time and more cost implementations on projects. And the second is subjectivity and complexity of the assessment. So environmental impact assessment is subjective, right? Because for you, the person who is the technical experts doing the environmental impact assessment, they make judgment according to their own understanding, right? So the subjectivity can lead to variations in interpretation and findings. And the complexity of the environmental systems can also make assessments create differences with interpretations. As a result, there may be debates about the accuracy of the assessments. So because of that subjectivity, one technical expert might analyze or interpret the findings differently to the other because of the subjectivity. And the third is potential conflicts and delays. So EIA can uncover conflicting interests among stakeholders, including project proponents, local communities, environmental groups, and regulatory bodies. Normally when developmental projects are coming in, they have to involve the public, and therefore, and Hamakoti, they have interest for Siana. And most of the times with developmental projects, there are those conflicting factors with regulatory bodies and also the ones who are going to be the project implementers. And the fourth is limitations in addressing cumulative and indirect impacts. So while we addressed that the EIA is very important, but we also highlighted that it is very subjective. It is very subjective because of the technical expertise, which results from combination of effects of multiple projects and occur over an extended period. So the implications can occur of a project in the long run that have not been oversighted, and also most of the times the EIA does not look at the implications that occur because of projects that have been done elsewhere. And the fifth is challenges in long-term impact prediction. So when you are looking at long-term impact prediction, and Famina Kamanga Seusanga Zoruza Cyclone Freddy, right? They had took into consideration, yes, natural disasters, but they did not look at the magnitude of a natural disaster that can cause washing away of a bridge, washing away of a road section, right? So it is very difficult to determine a long-term factor. So these factors such as the climate change, evolving ecosystem, population shift, that occur. So it is essential to consider these disadvantages with broader context with environmental impact assessment by making probable outweighs of the different drawbacks. Furthermore, these disadvantages the first one is limitation in addressing cumulative and indirect impacts. Cumulative and indirect impacts. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that was the last disadvantage. Okay, so to wrap up the lesson, we have looked at the human factor and environmental impact assessment, where we have determined the various interacting factors for people to engage in environmentally responsible behavior, having highlighted 6 models or theories of human environmental interaction. And we have looked at the environmental impact assessment, highlighting its importance in developmental projects that looks at the relevance of projecting environmental sustainability to developmental projects. And we have also looked at the public participation in environmental impact assessment, which is important because of the conflicting factors in desires and benefits of the project implementers and the community, as well as assisting the public to participate in project design and so on. And finally, we have looked at the various advantages and the disadvantages of the environmental impact assessment. So in the next lesson, we will look at the environmental impact assess process, the environmental impact assessment process, and we'll proceed from there. So I will send these notes in. I'll send these notes on the group. So you can switch.